I was actually born in St. Michael in the Azores. For those of you who may not know where that is, it's a set of islands about 2,000 miles from here, heading towards Europe at about 1,000 miles from Europe. And as a boy of 9 years old, I actually thought I knew everything. I'd explored the island on the north side, I explored the island on the south side, the east side, the west side. I was the king of the island. I knew everything about St. Michael's. And then my parents decided that they were going to do something and throw a little, quirk into it. They immigrated to this country. And I found out that the distance from where I first lived in Fall River to the ocean was about the distance of one end of the island to the other. And I found out that, interesting enough, that was my first experience, that the more you know, the more you realize there's a lot more to learn. There's a lot more that you don't know. When Thomas Friedman talked about his quote, I think one of the things that he was applying it to is not just to life in general, but I think it can be applied to the ocean. So today I'm going to talk to you about the marine ecosystem and the responsibility for that we have been entrusted to, and how can we expose more people to it and become good stewards of it. And I'm going to do that by first talking to you a little about the ocean, talking a little about how we treat it, and how we as individuals can actually make a difference. For a millennium, the ocean has been a rich source of nutrition and food for us. It's been a source of fun and activity. We actually have fun in it. It's also been a source for resources, minerals and oil. And it's also 80% of the world's trade actually flow through the ocean. So without the ocean, we wouldn't have the trade routes that we do today. So it provides us a whole bunch of opportunities. We have been studying the ocean for a very long time. And most of the experience that we've had have been through the top of the ocean, the surface of the ocean. Only recently have we started to explore underneath the ocean, and we do that with new technology, something they call remotely operated vehicles and autonomous underwater vehicles. And what these things do is they're able to go where man could not go before. And we're finding wonderful things in the ocean that we've never seen before. We're also finding some of the mysteries that we had and some misconceptions are being overthrown, and we have a new energy and a new understanding of what's underneath the ocean. Most of the experience that we've had, even to this date, comes from hands-on experience. People who fish, people who actually travel the oceans with trade, but most of that has been on the surface. Even then, as far back as a few hundred years, we've always had this desire to go deeper and to understand what's underneath. We are able to do that today. We have these large programs. NOAA sponsors underwater investigation, and they send these big robots with these big machines and these big ships. Lots of technology, lots of complication. But what that does, it really only makes that underwater world accessible to very few and very privileged. The scientific, those who can afford those things that are sponsored by research grants, etc. But the vast majority of the ocean, 95% of our ocean, is unexplored underneath. We've only explored a very small percentage of that. Just to give you a few facts, the deepest part of the ocean that we have is the Mariana Trench. It's a little over 36,000 feet deep. We've only had 2 manned explorations that far down, one just recently. To give you an idea, our jumbo jets fly at about the same altitude, the same distance from ground level to the top as the Mariana Trench from surface, from the ground sea level down to the bottom. It is bigger than Mount Everest, about twice the Matterhorn, so it's quite deep. To give you an idea of what that means, the pressure at that depth is about 8 tons per square inch. Tremendous amount of pressure is put on at that depth. That's equivalent to about 50 of those jumbo jets being held by one person. That's the kind of pressure that you're putting down at that level. So as you can see, it's quite difficult to get to those depths. However, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is in the South Coast, there's a tremendous amount of energy. We actually have a set of companies in the South Coast that are actually innovators, and they're challenging the new technologies for underwater exploration. Right here in New Bedford, I know that there's Rolls-Royce has some underwater technology that they operate out of here. As well, out of Fall River, we have a company called Ocean Server, which are producing autonomous underwater vehicles. And those vehicles, they're making those vehicles much more affordable. To give you an idea, an autonomous underwater vehicle typically costs $1–2 million. They're actually producing products that are about $250,000. Still a lot of money, but much more affordable. SMAS, right here in New Bedford, which is the School of Marine Science and Technology, which is part of the UMass program, is helping us to understand the hydrogen levels in our coastal waters, as well as look at renewable energy. Aquabotix, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. That's the company that I founded, and we're producing underwater exploration products, ROV products, remotely operated vehicles, for exploring under the water. And we're making that technology available to consumers as well as to commercial endeavors as well. We're just now starting to understand the impact that we have in our oceans. Some of our plastic bags that roll off of our, off our dumps end up in the water. Fish eat that, thinking that it's food. Kills hundreds of thousands of, marine life every year. Nets that we abandon out in the ocean entangle our sea life, and we put them in distress, which eventually leads to death for those animals. There's also other things that we do. We pollute. We throw all kinds of chemicals and all kinds of oils into the ocean. But I don't want to talk about the big things. I want to talk about the individual things that we as individuals do that cause all this stress as well. 80% of all the pollution that occurs in the oceans ends up from a land source. And we do that in various ways. Leaking cars, oil coming from it, produces more oil into the ocean than, say, the Exxon Valdez accident that we had in Prince William Sound. So we as individuals, each person has a responsibility and can make a difference. And I'll talk a little more about that in a minute. So it's less about the big issues, and I want to concentrate more about the individual issues. It's the belief that if you want to change the world, you have to start with yourself. You have to be the change you want to see in the world. And that's the premise that I founded the company Aquabotix, which is to make things more reachable to the individual. It's a fundamental belief that we as individuals, if we know more about our ocean and marine life, then we will be good stewards of it. So we're on a mission to try and get more people accessibility to that underwater world. The more people know about it, the better stewards we'll be. There is some obstacles to enabling that. One is we talked about this heavy machinery, multi-million dollars equipment, et cetera. So one of the first obstacles we have to remove is the affordability. We have to bring this technology, and I believe that we're just on the threshold of seeing exploration start to take off in our oceans and underwater oceans, not just for the professionals, but for the novice as well. Another obstacle that we have to remove is ease of use. That ROV that I showed you that NOAA had, that they put down, what they have is a huge control center with screens everywhere and several different people to operate that vehicle. That's very reminiscent of what we used to have in technology. If you look way back, we used to have these supercomputers that required these huge rooms with huge cooling, lots of people, technical people to run it, and today we have more power in an iPad or an iPhone than we did in those supercomputers. And that is now accessible to everybody. To my parents as well as to my grandkids. They know how to operate all that stuff. So ease of use is another one that we have to break. The third one I want to talk to you is about safety. For us to enable people to explore the ocean, we have to make sure that the typical consumer is safe. We don't want people dying while they're exploring under the water. The last one, which is the most important one, is we want to make all this, as people explore, as they take pictures of the underwater world, as they take video, as they explore and get temperatures or look at the salinity or take a look at sea life, we want all of this to be shared in a global network. We want to collect this data, we want to share this data, And for that to work, it has to be worldwide. It has to be open. There's no ownership of that. Very similar to what we've seen in other social media things such as Wikipedia, et cetera, where this community comes together to build this data knowledge and this data network. Purposeful. You can't just throw it out there. It has to be a purpose, and it has to be informative because people want to gather together and they have a common purpose in what they're trying to accomplish. It is the belief that if we do this, bring it together, share the experience that we have, that this will enable us to be more knowledgeable of what goes underneath the water. By doing that, we will then have, because it is in the human spirit to want to take care of those things we love, we'll be better stewards of our environment. Thank you.